This is Emperor Vorlag. Humanity, you have gone too far. Space erupted with furious sound, a roaring voice tearing through all communication frequencies, echoing into every corner of known space. There was no flowery prelude, no empty warnings. The signal transmitted directly to Earth, to every screen, every device, a declaration of war, resolute and uncompromising. Across the planet, billions fell silent as the image appeared. Vorlag, the eternal supreme emperor of the Vakar Empire, enthroned upon his war seat. He had no need to flaunt his power with words. His mere presence sufficed. Skin as black as polished obsidian, eyes blazing red like burning coals, a face etched with the brutality of countless conquests. You, insects daring to defy great Vakar. His voice growled, filled with arrogance and contempt. Your meager planet, your obsolete weapons, all of you are a joke. We will crush you, erase you from this universe. Behind Vorlag, the Vakar warlords roared in response, their savage laughter echoing like thunder. The declaration of war was no empty threat. The colossal Vakar fleet had already surrounded Earth, locking down all escape routes. Humanity's fate now could be counted in hours. On Earth, panic spread like a plague. But within the top-secret war bunker of the Human United Defense Initiative, there was no room for fear. Seated around a round table, generals, scientists, world leaders steeled themselves to face the impending storm. Sergeant Anya Petrova, the steel woman with short-cropped hair and a cold gaze, smirked slightly. More theatrics from power-hungry alien wannabes, she quipped sarcastically. A cosmic tyrant wants to destroy us just because we offended his twisted sense of order? General Valerius, a seasoned commander with countless medals and war scars, frowned. Sergeant, be serious. General, I've never been more serious, Petrova retorted, her eyes unwavering. We cannot confront the Vakar fleet with force, but we can exploit their weakness, arrogance. Lieutenant Corsica, a sniping expert with a sharp analytical mind, nodded in agreement. They think we are weak insects, unworthy of their attention. That's a fatal mistake. Petrova smiled, a flicker of madness in her eyes. Then let's show them how these insects can bite an elephant to death. A daring plan was quickly formulated. No defense, no surrender. Instead, a preemptive strike, directly into the heart of the Vakar Empire, the capital Zeroth 9. Econ, the team's tech prodigy, displayed a hologram of the magnificent capital city. Zeroth 9's defense systems are practically non-existent, he explained. The Vakar are too confident in their own strength. They never imagined anyone would dare attack their homeworld directly. Valerius was still hesitant. This is a suicide mission. We only have a small strike team. General, Petrova stood up, her voice steely. If we die, then let us die as heroes. But we will not die. We will do the impossible. We will capture Emperor Vorlag alive, drag him through the streets for the entire galaxy to see. That is how we end this war. The Mosquito strike team was formed. Petrova, Corsica, Econ, Blast, and the talented female pilot Phoenix. An impossible mission, with Stone Age-like means of attack. They would impersonate intergalactic health inspectors, exploiting the Vakar's biowarfare obsession to infiltrate Zeroth 9. The deception lasted for exactly 17 minutes. When a Vakar guard became suspicious of the inspection team, carrying weapons heavier than syringes, gunfire erupted. Petrova acted swiftly, her sidearms spitting precise shots. Corsica provided cover fire from afar. Blast and Econ cleared a path into the palace. Health inspectors, my ass, Blast muttered while firing. We're the real plague of the Vakar here. The inspectors stormed into the throne room. Vorlag stood majestic on his throne, astonished to see the Mosquito squad barging in. The broadcast cameras were still live, transmitting the historic moment to every corner of the galaxy. Vorlag opened his mouth to roar, but Petrova was faster. Surprise, motherfucker. The gunshot echoed thunderously. The bullet ripped through the air, slamming straight into Vorlag's leg. A horrifying scream shattered the regal atmosphere. The Vakar Emperor, ruler of the galaxy, collapsed like a hunted beast shot down. The Vakar warlords were utterly horrified. The impossible had happened. Humanity not only retaliated, but triumphed. Petrova grabbed Vorlag's royal robe, dragging the defeated tyrant out of the palace. Victory only truly began when their emperor was dragged through the streets, for the entire galaxy to witness the pathetic sight of the loser. The stolen Vakar transport shuddered slightly as it pierced through the thick atmosphere of Zeroth 9, capital of the Vakar Empire. The view through the cockpit window was both breathtaking and infuriating. Below them sprawled a colossal metropolis of sharp, gleaming architecture. Towering spires reached for the dark green sky, an arrogant display of wealth and power. Everything about the city was perfectly symmetrical, artificial, as if constructed to reflect the Empire's belief in their own superiority. Sergeant Petrova, seated in the co-pilot chair, remained unimpressed. Couldn't these guys build a single messy street? Just a back alley would do, she muttered, adjusting the straps on her combat vest. To be fair, Corsica replied, leaning back with his sniper rifle across his lap. If my species had never lost a war, I'd probably build my cities like smug assholes too. Econ, the team's tech specialist, was tapping furiously at his tablet, monitoring security feeds. All right, listen up, we're officially on the approved landing list. But that's only going to last another 8 minutes before they realize this isn't their ship anymore. He glanced up. When we land, everyone stick to the plan. Walk fast, look important, and whatever you do, don't speak first. Vakar officials expect underlings to wait until spoken to. It's a cultural thing. Blast, the demolitions expert, grinned. What happens if one of them does talk to us first? Then we answer in the most condescending way possible, Petrova said, standing up. Let's move. The ship touched down with a soft hiss. The landing bay was already bustling with Vakar officers and bureaucrats, all clad in their flowing, embroidered uniforms. The team stepped off the ramp, each of them clad in sleek, unmarked armor that Econ had designed to look just Vakar enough to avoid suspicion. They carried notebooks and data pads as if they belonged to some shadowy division of Imperial Sanitation and Disease Control, which, as it turned out, actually existed. Petrova adjusted the high collar of her disguise and led the team forward at a brisk pace. Immediately, a hulking Vakar official blocked their path, his golden insignia indicating a mid-level rank. His reptilian features twisted into a look of skepticism. You, he barked, narrowing his glowing yellow eyes. You are not the usual inspectors. Petrova barely glanced at him. Your usual inspectors, she said, her voice dripping with professional disinterest, were reallocated. We are the new review team sent under Imperial Authority Directive 7 Gamma. She shoved a forged data pad under his nose, the alien text glowing menacingly. The Vakar hesitated, eyes darting to the screen, lips pressed together, visible discomfort. Petrova knew exactly why. Directive 7 Gamma did not exist, and because it did not exist, he would never admit he didn't know what it was. The Vakar cleared his throat. Yes, of course, proceed. Petrova did not thank him. That would have implied weakness. She simply nodded sharply, then walked past him without another word. As they entered the main corridors of the Grand Imperial Complex, Corsica whistled softly. You just bluffed a guy twice your size with a fake directive. That's the universal truth of bureaucracy, Petrova replied. The bigger the system, the more terrified its employees are of looking uninformed. They passed through a lavish hallway lined with massive portraits of Emperor Vorlag, each one depicting him in increasingly absurd poses, conquering planets, standing atop mountains, holding entire galaxies in his palm like some overgrown Saturday morning cartoon villain. Blast couldn't help himself and muttered, "This guy's really got a thing for himself, huh?" Econ smirked, but didn't slow his pace. We're approaching the central data hub. I need 120 seconds to plant the virus and lock the palace doors remotely. The plan was simple in theory. Infiltrate the Grand Imperial Complex, reach the palace fortress, isolate Emperor Vorlag, and make a very public display of his demise. What happened after that? Probably chaos. They reached a towering set of Nate doors, flanked by 2 Vakar guards who looked even more irritated than usual. The team strode forward as if they belonged, but just as Petrova prepared to walk past them, one of the guards stepped directly into her path. "Hold," he said. Petrova did not stop walking. Instead, she scoffed audibly, turning just enough to glare at him as if he were the single dumbest creature in existence. The Vakar faltered. My unit is on a highly classified biohazard evaluation, and you are wasting our time, she snapped, her expression as imperious and offended as she could make it. Do you wish to be personally responsible for a level 4 contamination violation? The guard stiffened, his 5-fingered hands curling into anxious fists. No, of course not. I was only, then move. Petrova ordered. The guards moved aside. Corsica exhaled sharply as they entered the secured wing of the complex. I cannot believe that worked again. They're a species built on hierarchy, Petrova said. They don't question authority because they don't think they need to. They rounded a corner, and Econ gestured towards a massive data terminal embedded in the wall. This is it. Give me 60 seconds. As he set to work, Petrova and Corsica took up guard positions. The corridors here were eerily silent, the usual hum of activity absent. Then suddenly, a voice boomed from the intercoms. Who dares breach the sanctuary of Vorlag the Infinite? The team froze. Econ cursed under his breath, fingers flying over his tablet. Something's wrong. I think the security system just flagged our access codes. Petrova didn't hesitate. She grabbed her radio and barked. Phoenix, we need an emergency blackout on their security grid, now. On it, their pilot's voice crackled back. The lights flickered, then plunged the corridor into darkness. Corsica moved first, lifting his rifle. We need to move now. Footsteps thundered down the halls. Blast pulled out a small explosive charge and slapped it against the nearest support column. We're about to make a real dramatic exit. Econ ripped a cable from the data port and grinned. Good news, I locked down the throne room. That bastard isn't going anywhere. Petrova turned toward the approaching guards and cocked her rifle. Good, because I really want to meet him. The explosives detonated, collapsing part of the corridor behind them. And just like that, the Vakar capital fell into chaos. The throne room of Emperor Vorlag the Infinite was built to inspire terror. Towering pillars of obsidian and silver rose into a domed ceiling that mimicked the swirling void of deep space, vast and infinite. The floor was polished to a mirror shine, reflecting the kneeling forms of hundreds of subjugated officials, each one bowing in silent reverence to the monstrous figure seated upon the throne. Emperor Vorlag had ruled for nearly 3 centuries, and in that time, he had never once known fear, until now. The blast doors slammed open with a thunderous crash, the sound reverberating across the chamber like the opening chords of a war march. The kneeling officials gasped, their eyes snapping upward as a squad of humans strode through the smoke and debris, stepping onto the pristine marble with absolute defiance. Leading them was Sergeant Anya Petrova, a smear of blood and ash streaking across her cheek, her rifle still smoking from the last shot she had fired. She did not hesitate. She did not slow. She walked like she owned the place, her boots clicking in rhythmic defiance against the alien stone. Emperor Vorlag rose from his throne, his massive armored frame dwarfing every being in the room. His obsidian skin rippled as he flexed his claws. His molten yellow eyes narrowed in unmasked fury. You dare enter my domain? Vorlag's voice rumbled like distant thunder, his many-layered vocal cords twisting the words into something that made the lesser species of the galaxy tremble. But Petrova was not lesser. She tilted her head slightly, lips curling into something just shy of amusement. Yeah, she said, rolling her shoulders as if she were stepping into a boxing ring instead of the seat of a galactic empire. Daring is kind of our thing. Vorlag took a step forward, his heavy battle armor clanking as he moved. His regal robe lined with the torn banners of defeated civilizations swayed behind him. You are but a pest, he snarled. A fleeting, insignificant speck in the grand symphony of my rule. Petrova nodded. Uh-huh. And yet, she gestured around the room at the shocked expressions of the Vakar court, at the burning halls behind them. I'm the one standing here. And you're the one running out of options. The silence in the room was suffocating. Vorlag's eyes flickered towards the great doors, the only exit now sealed shut by Econ's hacking. Petrova saw it immediately. You thinking of running? She asked, almost offended. I expected more. Vorlag's lips pulled back, revealing rows of razor-sharp fangs. I do not run, he spat. Good. Petrova replied, cracking her knuckles. Then let's do this. The first strike came faster than anyone in the room anticipated. Vorlag lunged, his gravity hammer materializing in his hands as he brought it down with enough force to shatter a tank. But Petrova was already moving. She rolled forward, sliding between his legs as the hammer obliterated the floor where she had just been standing. The impact sent a shockwave rippling through the chamber, sending Vakar officials scrambling away in terror. Corsica opened fire, his sniper rounds pinging uselessly off Vorlag's reinforced battle plating. Blast through a plasma grenade, but Vorlag simply swatted it away midair, sending it detonating harmlessly into a wall. "Okay," Blast muttered. "So that didn't work." Vorlag turned, his massive shadow looming over Petrova, his molten eyes narrowing. "You cannot defeat me, human." Petrova smirked. "See, that's where you messed up." She dashed forward, dodging left then right, weaving beneath the king's massive arms before planting both feet and swinging her knife upward. The blade forged from Earth's most advanced alloys found a gap in the armor right beneath the ribs. Vorlag roared, staggering backward. It was the first real injury he had sustained in over a century, and he felt it. The court watched in horror as a trickle of obsidian blood seeped from the wound, dripping onto the pristine white marble. A hushed murmur spread through the room. Vorlag's perfect, untouchable image was shattering, and Petrova wasn't done. She kicked off the ground, launching herself upward, using his own armor as leverage as she scaled his massive frame like a rock climber. Vorlag swung wildly, trying to dislodge her, but she was too fast. She reached his shoulder, locked her legs around his neck, and yanked her knife across his throat. The blade sliced deep, but not deep enough to kill. No, that part would come next. Vorlag staggered, his hands clutching his bleeding neck, his eyes wide with disbelief. "You," he gasped, "you are impossible." Petrova dropped down in front of him, flicking the obsidian blood from her knife as she tilted her head. "You know what the funniest part is?" she asked, stepping forward. "We didn't even need advanced alien tech to take you down." Vorlag stumbled, dropping to one knee. "Just grit," she continued, circling him like a predator. "Some good old-fashioned dirty fighting, and a metric ton of human pettiness." Then she grabbed one of the fallen royal banners, wrapped it around his thick throat, and yanked. The Emperor of the Vakar Empire, conqueror of worlds, collapsed forward, gasping, choking as a mere human dragged him face-first across his own throne room. The court officials watched in stunned silence, their entire belief system collapsing before them. The unstoppable was now on the ground, and the humans, they were standing over him. Petrova wiped the sweat from her forehead, then tilted her head toward the palace doors. "Blast," she called out. "Get the vehicle ready." Blast grinned. "Already placing explosives along the outer walls, way ahead of you." Petrova turned back to Vorlag, whose massive form twitched weakly, his eyes still burning with defiance even as his strength faded. "You are nothing," he choked out. Petrova crouched next to him, resting an elbow on her knee. "Yeah," she said, raising an eyebrow. "Then why are you the one being dragged out of your own palace?" With that, she wrapped the banner tighter, securing it to the back of the armored vehicle waiting just outside, and then she dragged him out. His massive form scraping across the streets of Zeroth 9, his people watching in horrified awe. For the first time in their empire's long, undefeated history, the Vakar saw what true defeat looked like. It wasn't a battle, it wasn't a war, it was their greatest ruler humiliated, broken, and utterly powerless at the hands of a single human. The empire began to crumble that very moment. And Petrova, she just kept dragging. The streets of Zeroth 9, once the pristine heart of the Vakar Empire, were now filled with a sound they had never known before: silence. Not the silence of reverence, nor the stillness of order, but something deeper, something that crawled into the bones of every Vakar who witnessed their god emperor dragged like a corpse through the dust. Petrova Russell had seen fear before, but never like this. The elite warriors, the so-called invincible forces of the Vakar, stood frozen along the avenue as their king Vorlag the Infinite, the untouchable, the unconquerable, was hauled across his own streets. His regal robes torn and filthy, his massive form limp, his ornate crown lost somewhere in the rubble. His people did not kneel, they did not rush forward to save him. They only stared, horror replacing faith as the undeniable truth settled into their bones. The humans had won. Petrova walked beside the armored vehicle, her rifle slung across her back, her boots crunching against the once immaculate pavement. She could feel thousands of Vakar eyes on her, but none dared move. "You know," blast, Corsica mused from the driver's seat, casually flicking a toothpick between his teeth. "I expected a little more resistance." "They don't know how to fight when the script flips," Vasquez said, perched on top of the vehicle with his rifle in hand, scanning the rooftops for any last-ditch attempts at heroism. "They only know how to win. Losing, they've got no manual for that." Petrova glanced toward the palace, its monstrous spires looming in the distance, the last remnants of smoke curling into the green sky. The walls, once a monument to Vakar dominance, were scarred from explosions, entire sections crumbling into ruin. Ekon tapped at his tablet, still monitoring the hacked communication lines. "We've got full control of their broadcast networks. The entire empire just watched their leader get his ass kicked." He paused, reading something. "And we're getting surrender pings, a lot of them." Petrova smirked. "Of course we are." She turned her gaze back to the capital, where Vakar civilians were beginning to emerge from their sterile, towering structures. They stepped cautiously, their expressions ranging from disbelief to abject terror. Not because of the destruction, not because of the invaders, but because they had been taught one simple, unwavering truth their entire lives: the king does not fall. And yet, a Vakar child, no more than 7 feet tall, tiny by their species standards, stood near the curb, his glowing yellow eyes wide and unblinking as he clutched his father's sleeve. His father, a former official by the look of his intricate robes, merely stared at his fallen ruler, his fingers trembling. The child, with the honest simplicity only children possess, asked, "Father, what do we do now?" And that was it. That was the moment the empire broke. The murmur spread like wildfire, from the balconies, from the doorways, from the shadowed alleys of the once invincible capital. Voices rose, hushed and uncertain, as millennia of indoctrination collapsed in seconds. The whispers became questions, the questions became realization, and the realization became something even the humans hadn't anticipated: rage. Not toward the humans, toward the Vakar Empire itself. A stone flew first, hurled from an unknown hand, bouncing off Vorlag's useless armored form. Then another, and then the dam burst. The people of Zeroth 9, of the entire Vakar Empire, finally saw their king for what he was: not a god, not a legend, just a being who bled, who lost, who wasn't worthy of their fear anymore. The riot ignited in seconds. It began with the civilians, but the soldiers soon followed. The guards who had once crushed revolts with impunity now turned their weapons not on the humans, but on the palace, on the banners, on the symbols of a rule built on arrogance and fear. Petrova didn't flinch as statues of Vorlag toppled, crashing into the streets below. Blast gave a low whistle. That escalated quickly. Ekon read through the flood of intercepted communications. "Oh yeah, this isn't just here. Every Vakar colony is in full panic mode. Governors are bailing. Warlords are scrambling. Hell, I think a few of them are already declaring independence." Corsica laughed. "It's always the second-in-commands who flip first." Petrova finally stopped walking. She turned and looked at the ruined, twitching body of Vorlag, still barely conscious, his once perfect visage now bloodied and broken, a smear on the streets of his own empire. She crouched beside him, voice low, just for him. "Here's the thing about humans," she murmured. "You thought we were weak because we didn't fight like you. You thought you could mock us, humiliate us, break us." She leaned in just a little closer. "But we don't break. We just wait." Vorlag's breath was shallow now, his 5-clawed fingers twitching as if trying to grasp onto a power that had already slipped away. "This is how it ends, Emperor," Petrova continued. "Not with a war, not with some grand last stand, just a human dragging your sorry ass through the streets while your empire burns behind you." Vorlag managed a weak, rasping breath. "You are monsters." Petrova chuckled softly. "Nah, we're just petty as hell." She stood, taking a slow step back. Then without another word, she raised her pistol, aimed between his molten yellow eyes, and pulled the trigger. The last king of the Vakar Empire died with his face in the dirt. The streets roared in approval. The footage spread in minutes, and across the entire galaxy, The realization settled like a storm front on every empire, every warlord, every species that had ever laughed at humanity. The humans had done the impossible. They hadn't just fought the greatest empire in the galaxy. They had humiliated it, crushed its pride, and walked away grinning. The message was clear: do not mess with Earth. Because if you do, they will drag your king through the streets and shoot him in the head. Petrova took a deep breath, exhaling as she turned back toward the team. So, she said, slinging her rifle over her shoulder, pizza? Blast grinned. Hell yeah. And just like that, they walked away, leaving the ruins of an empire behind them.